أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد حج
وعلى
الفرج
أهل بيته الأطيبين الأجلين بهم نتولى ومن أعدائهم نتبرأ إلى الله. اللهم كن وليك المجدد بن حسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا معينا حتى تسكنه أرضك الدوام وتمتعه فيها طويلا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
We ask Allah Ta'ala to make this majlis of ours a majlis of ma'rifah, a majlis of nur, which remains an asset for us in our graves, barzakh and in Qiyamah. In a glorious hadith says that Shi'atuna qad khulaqu min qadili tinatina wa ujinu binurin bilaya. That our Shias, they've been created with the leftover clay with which Ma'asumeen were created, and that clay was mixed with the nur of Wilayah. If we look into our own selves, for example, a night like tonight, which is the night when Amir al-Mu'mineen is hit, we by just seeing the black clothes that we are wearing, we are in grief, we are sad. When someone recites, we feel like crying. What is the reason behind that? Or on an occasion like the 15th of Sha'ban, 13th of Rajab, for example, we are happy. Without anyone uttering anything, without anyone reciting anything, we are happy. The reason for that joy and this sorrow is that the creation of ours with Ma'asumeen is the same, as this hadith says. That Ma'asumeen were created, Mu'mineen were created with the leftover clay with which Ma'asumeen were created. And that clay was mixed with the nur and light of Wilayah. In another quote, we find that Zurara, one of the students of Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, Imam has lessons every day. And on one occasion, Zurara is absent. The next day, Imam inquires Zurara, why were you absent yesterday? Now, Imam doesn't need to inquire. The knowledge, the ilm which he possesses, it's vast. Now, this is for the message to be conveyed to us. Zurara doesn't reply. He inquires again, he doesn't answer. And then Zurara says, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, the reason for my absence was that I had invited the best of those who cry for your grandfather Hussain to my house yesterday. 4 or 5 people in town, the best of those who recited, the best of those who cry. In every community you have people who recite really good. You have people who cry really good for Allah. Zurara says, I invited them and we in turn, each one of us recited and we all cried for your grandfather Hussain. Imam says, I know that. Zurara says, Imam says, because I was present in that majlis. Zurara says that I had a feeling, I had a sensation that there is someone by the door. Imam says, not a feeling, not a sensation. Me, myself in person was present by the door. Zurara says, Imam, if you had come, why didn't you step in? Why didn't you join us? He says, how could I have done that? Because my mother Zahra, she was clad with footwear, she was seated there and I had to sit with her. So a majlis, then Imam continues and says that wheresoever a majlis is held, the reciter is one, and the one person, and the listener, the audience is also just one person, the third of us, the Ahlul Bayt alayhi wassalam. So a majlis held for Ahlul Bayt, a majlis held for Abu Abdullah, a majlis held for Amir al-Mu'mineen, it's great. The reward is also great. Ma'asumeen also are present. And this can be certified by ayat of Quran, inshallah, not tonight, on a later occasion. In another quote I have over here, Imam Baqir alayhi salatu wassalam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Imam says that La yuhibbuna abdun wa la yatawallana. Now we all love Ahlul Bayt. We cry for them, we are happy in their joys. Imam says that no servant would love us, وَلَا يَتَوَلَّانَا, nor would be obedient to us, but that because of this love and that obedience you have towards the Ahlul Bayt, Allah purifies their heart. As a result of this love that we have towards Amir al-Mu'mineen, towards Ahlul Bayt, Allah purifies our hearts. And then says that when Allah purifies a heart, that person submits to Allah, submits to us, the Ahlul Bayt. And that says that someone who has submitted to Allah, who has submitted to us, the Ahlul Bayt, will be protected, will be immune from the horror of the Day of Judgment.
Wow.
Just because of this love. Now when we say love, what does it mean? Quran says that إن كنتم تحبون الله فاتبعوني يحببكم الله. If your claim is that you love me, that is Allah, He says that فاتبعوني, be obedient to me. يحببكم الله, Allah will also love you. So this is a reciprocal arrangement between us and our Lord, between us and Ahlul Bayt. Just a mere love will not be of any use. Love with obedience. In Islam, obedience plays the most or the vital factor in our salvation. If we love Amir al-Mu'mineen, we have to submit to him. We have to be obedient to him. Now obedience, how much of an obedience? As we like? No, whatever he says has to be done. Not that what I like. Quran says that مَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. Whatever Rasulullah has said to you, do it. Whatever. Without picking and choosing. He has given you a package, take that package blindly and do it. If someone is obedient to this package which was given by Rasulullah, then when Imam al-Asr alayhi salam returns, and if he gives out his risala and says that this is my tawziyul masail and you have to abide by the rulings in that, it's going to be easier for us. And if, that is to say that if we are obedient to our mujtahid, whoever he is, whoever is taqleed we are in, if we are obedient to him today, tomorrow it will be easier for us to be obedient to Imam al-Asr. And if we are disobedient to the mujtahid we follow today, then tomorrow definitely we have to be certain that we won't be obedient to the Imam. So this era, this period that we are living in, it is a period of probation, training period. That we have to train ourselves to become so good to accept whatever the instructions he gives blindly, so that when he comes and gives out instructions, it's going to be easier for us. So in our deen, when we talk about imamat means submission. That is, we have loads of ahadith over here. Now in one of these quotes we have from our sixth Imam says that the Sahabi, he enters upon the Imam and says, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, why don't you rise? Like your grandfather Abu Abdullah Hussain had risen, you also, why don't you rise? Imam says to him, what about the supporters? He says you have a lot of supporters. Now Imam then gives out the instructions to the maid, says, can you light that oven? The maid, she lights the oven. Imam says to this companion who said, why don't you rise? Come on, get up, go to that oven and sit at the oven. He says, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, comes up with all the excuses. Quran says, La turqu bi aydikum ila tahluka, don't put yourself in danger, don't hurt yourself, don't harm yourself. Imam continues with his talk with him. Another Sahabi comes in. Imam says, Salamun alaykum. Imam replies and says, go into the oven. Remove your shoes and go into the oven. He removes his footwear and jumps in the oven. Imam continues his conversation with this Sahabi who had originally said that, why don't you rise? And he was all worried about that Sahabi who was already in the oven. And then Imam says to the one in the oven, come out. He comes out, nothing has happened to him. Imam says, how was it there? He says, a garden of bliss.
Oh, wow, Ahsan.
That is as a result of obedience to the Imam. Then Imam says that, how many of the companions and supporters do you think I have, like the one who sat in the oven? He says, just the one. That is the only one. As a result of which Imam doesn't rise. If you look into the history of Ma'asumeen, we say Abu Abdullah Hussain was Mazloom, but he is the luckiest. He had 72 supporters. None of the Imams had 72, not even Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen, when the people in Medina came to his house and say that, Imam, why don't you rise? We are your supporters. Imam says, okay, tomorrow at this time, all those of you who want me to rise with your swords in your hands and your heads shaved off, come to this house and I will rise. Out of those hundreds of people who had asked Imam to rise, just 4 came. Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, maybe 1 or 2 among his supporters. Many of the Imams had none who could support, who they could rely upon. So obedience plays the vital role. If we claim that we are the followers of Ahlul Bayt, now all this is a lesson to myself, to you brothers and sisters, a reminder. If we claim that we are the followers and supporters of Ahlul Bayt, we have to train ourselves from now. That is, this obedience has to be activated, has to be enhanced. Whatever is told to us by the mujtahid has to be blindly accepted and performed. A person, he comes to the present now, because the days are of Amir al-Mu'mineen, we'll talk about imamat in these days so that we get an idea of what exactly imamat is. Now, one of the things we talk about in imamat is, imam is ma'asum. What does ma'asum mean? The translation of that is infallible. And we believe that ma'asum, from the day he is born, from the moment he is born, to the moment he dies, no sin should be committed by this imam, no wrong should be committed by the imam, he should not forget anything throughout the duration of this time. And that is ismat, that is ma'asum. There are different opinions here. Some other schools of thought, they say that imam, or a prophet, from the moment that prophethood is given to him, he has to be ma'asum. Before that, doesn't matter. Some say that from the time he becomes baligh and mature, from that moment till he dies. Some say that no, he can be like every other person, he can do what he wants, and he can also be a ma'asum. That is another way. What we believe is that from the moment he is born till the moment he dies, he has to be pure. In every aspect he has to be pure. Now what does this ismat mean? Means infallible. That is, wrong is not done by them. Not that they cannot do wrong. If they want, they can. But they don't do it. Why don't they do it? For example, if there is some boiling water over here, if I pour that boiling water on my hand, it's going to harm me, it's going to hurt me. I don't do it. Because I've got that knowledge that it's going to harm me. If there is poison, I will not use it because I know it's going to harm me. So this aql of mine, it is that little bit of ismat which I possess, which does not allow me to do this wrong. Ma'asum, with the knowledge which Allah has given to him by His grace, that knowledge shows him what the wrong and the consequences of every wrong, every evil, every haram, every makruh, as a result of which they do not go towards that haram, towards that wrong. So, aql which I have, the minimum aql which I have, multiply that by infinity, that is ismat, which ma'asumeen possess. As a result of which, they do not do wrong, they do not sin. So that is ismat. So it's simple. Aql multiplied by infinity is ismat. So Ma'asumeen, they possess that ilm which is given by Allah, they possess that ismat which does not allow them to come towards wrong. Not that they cannot come towards wrong, it does not allow them. A person, he comes to our sixth Imam, Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. Says that, Ya Rasulullah, a true person who is waiting for the Imam, any instructions for him? What do you say? Any dua for him? Imam says, recite this dua, you've heard it a lot. Allahumma arifni nafsak. Allah, make yourself known to me. إِنَّكَ إِن لَمْ تُعَرِّفْنِي نَفْسَكَ لَمْ أَعْرِفْ رَسُولَكَ. If you don't make yourself known to me, I will not know your Rasul. If you're Rasul, and make your Rasul known to me. And if I don't know who your Rasul is, I will not know who the Imam is. And if I don't know who the Imam is, I will be misled, I will be deviated. So knowing the Imam, it is the basic requirements of each one of us. We have to know them. When I say that I have to know my Imam, what does it mean? Just his ID, I know his name, date of birth, who his parents are? That is not sufficient. That is the basic requirements. In addition to the ID of the Imam, we have to know a little bit more of the Imam, whereabouts of the Imam. Where is the Imam now? When he arrives, what is his mission going to be? And what are the expectations of the Imam from us, and what is his mission? That is also part of that ma'rifat which I have to know. That Imam, in addition to his ID, who he is, I have to know what his mission is, what his tasks are, what are the tasks assigned to me. Now if you look into the return of the Imam, for example, Sufyani, we have to know who Sufyani is. Now one of the tactics of Muawiyah, la'natullah alayhi, was that he said, teach and educate people about Tawheed, doesn't matter. Teach them, let them pray, offer prayers as much as they want. Perform Hajj and fast, doesn't matter. His instructions were that, do not teach people what shirk is. Why? Because the first of mushrikeen is he himself. So if you know who is opposing Allah, then his position is in danger. Our teachings are that you know yourself, you know your Lord, and you know your own nafs. Nafs means who is your enemy. أَعْدَى عَدُوَّكَ نَفْسَكَ الَّتِي بَيْنَ جَنْبَيْكَ. Worst of your enemies is that nafs of yours which is in yourself, that is that shaitan. We are said to know the enemy first. You know the enemy, and then you know what his tactics are. You know shaitan. Ma'rifat shaitan is also one of the important topics that we have to know him. What shaitan does. Even today, satanic traps that we have all around us, we have to know them. Only then can we get on the right path. But Muawiyah, his teachings were that we don't need to know all that. Now, in this dua says, Arifni. We have to know that ma'rifat has to be increased. Looking back into history, for example, we are talking and mourning Amir al-Mu'mineen here. During the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen, people, they came to Amir al-Mu'mineen, they used to say, the slogans they had, Anta waliyuna, Anta imamuna, Anta khalifatuna. That you are our wali, you are our custodian, you are our imam, you are our khalifa. But did they stand by that? Or did they? No. If you look into Ma'asumeen, all of them, all 12 of them, Noorun Wahid. They are one. One light, one Noor. Performance of Amir al-Mu'mineen during his time exactly would have been the same performance of Imam al-Mujtaba during his time. The same during the time of Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam. Whatever they've done, it's exactly the same reflection of one another. And the same applies to the 12th Imam, Imam al-Asr alayhi salam. So we talked about obedience. How much of an obedience has to be there? Umar, the second Khalifa, when it was the last days of his life, people they came and said to him, who will the Khalifa after you be? He says, after me, 6 of the men here in Medina, you take them and lock them in a room, and they will decide who the next Khalifa is going to be. Among them are Talha, Zubayr, Abdul Rahman bin Auf, Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, Osman, and Amir al-Mu'mineen, 6. And then he says they will decide who the next Khalifa is going to be. They will vote. And then he says, if the vote and the voting was a draw, my vote is with Abdul Rahman bin Auf. Whoever he gives his vote to will be the next Khalifa. Now they take these 6 men, they lock them in a room for them to decide who the next Khalifa is, and it comes out to be a draw, 3 and 3. Abdul Rahman bin Auf, he comes up to Amir al-Mu'mineen, says that according to the instructions of the Khalifa, the second Khalifa, I extend my allegiance to you, Ali ibn Abi Talib. According to the teachings of Allah, ala kitabillah, wa ala sunnati nabiyyih, and according to the teachings of the Prophet, and in accordance to the teachings of Shaykhain, the first and the second. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Abdullah bin Auf, was holding the hands of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He pulls his hands away and says that according to the teachings of Allah, yes. According to the teachings of Rasulullah, yes. But according to the teachings of Shaykhain, no. If I was to rule and become the Khalifa, it would be in accordance to the teachings of Allah, to the teachings of Rasulullah, and in accordance to my own teachings. Now looking into the personality of Amir al-Mu'mineen, we see that a Khilafat had come to him, but he rejects, he denies it. People, they objected. They said that, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, why did you deny that Khilafat? You should have accepted it, and then you should have carried out your mission. Look at the beautiful reply. Imam says that a Khilafat whose foundation stone is going to be laid on lies, that I cannot accept. A foundation of Khilafat on falsehood cannot be accepted. So this is difficult. We cannot take this so easily. So if it is Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, I can't. Now I'll give you some more examples as to how the performance of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the Imam when he returns is going to be so difficult. Now these types of situations, for us to understand them, it's not easy. Awliyaullah, Ma'sumeen alayhim as-salam, when it comes to judgment, they don't judge like what we have in the judiciary systems today. You have got a plaintiff, you've got a... Not like that. They judge by wahy. For example, in a hadith, Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, he was among the rulers who was also a judge, a qazi. His judgment was based upon wahy. A person, he comes to him. Now it so happens that there is a young boy in town, he is hungry, he prays that Allah sends some sustenance, some food to him. The door of his house was open. A cow comes in his house. He slaughters the cow and cooks and eats. The person who is the owner of this cow, he runs behind this cow, sees that it has come into this house and this boy, he has slaughtered it. Comes to Prophet Dawood and complains, that is, Ya Nabi Allah, this is what has happened and I want you to judge between me and this boy rightfully. Prophet Dawood, as his system was, he sits, waits for wahi. Wahi is revealed. Wahi says that Dawood, say to this claimant, this man who owns this cow, forget and forgive. He says, what forget and forgive? It's my property. I will not forget, I will not forgive. I want my cow back. All the money to be paid back to him. He makes a row in that courtroom. Prophet Dawood sits and waits for wahi. Wahi is revealed. Says that Dawood, instructions are that this man has to give away half of his wealth to that boy. He says, what type of judgment was this? It was my property. I lost it and you want me to give away half of my property to him? When he makes a lot of noise in that courtroom, Prophet Dawood sits, waits for wahi. Wahi is revealed. Says that all of his wealth be given to that boy. In addition to that, his slaves, his animals, whatever he possesses should be given to him. When he makes a lot of noise there, wahi is revealed. In addition to those maids and slaves, he himself, the owner of this cow, be given to that boy as a slave.
Allahu Akbar.
Now, there's a big mess in the courtroom here. Now, what is the reply to all this? Prophet Dawood is instructed to take that boy and this man to a cemetery, to a graveyard. They come by a grave. Grave is of the father of this young boy who had slaughtered that cow. Prophet Dawood says, Bi'iznillah, to that deceased to rise, and he gets up, he is alive. Says, you tell us what the story is. He says that this man was my partner, he killed me, usurped all of my wealth, my possession, and in reality, the rightful owner of all of this wealth was that boy who had slaughtered that animal. So this is how Prophet Dawood judged. This is how Amir al-Mu'mineen judged. This is how Imam al-Asr will judge. So looking into this scenario, it's not going to be an easy situation. So when Imam is to judge, we do find in Riwayat, we do have many instances over here, and inshallah in the forthcoming nights I will mention about that. For example, one of the ulama, Marhum Wahid Behbahani, like these days of Ramadan, Mubarak, that you invite a speaker, he speaks, he also spoke for the sacred month. And after his speech, he said that Allahumma, we say, Ajil fi faraji Mawlana Sahib al-Zaman, Allah hasten in the return. We say that, he said, Allah delay in the return of the Imam. Now upon this, people, they objected, what is this? We've been saying Ajil, Ajil, and you say delay, delay. They got offended. They rolled the prayer mat. They said to this alim, go home. And the person who was in charge of that prayer mat, he said, that's it, done. You don't need to continue with your talks and lectures here. He comes to his house. Early in the morning, there's someone banging, knocking at the door. Now this alim is Marhum Bahbahani, among the greatest ulama. He says, he must have come to kick me out of this town now. They don't want me to stay in this town. He says, open the door. He says, why? He says, I just want to give you a message. He opens the doors, falls onto the feet of this alim, and says, I'm sorry. What you said was right. The delay in the return of the Imam. Says, what happened? How come in just a few hours such a big change in you? He says, we kicked you out of the mosque. I came home and slept. I had a dream. I saw Imam has arrived. And I am with the Imam by the pulpit, by the member of the Imam. The first instruction Imam gives to me is that Imam says, this rug in your house, this carpet, roll it and put it aside. It's ghasbi. It doesn't belong to you. You haven't paid that khums of it. It's not your property. And then he says, this property which you are living in, there is a share of an orphan, a yatim in it. It is ghasbi. You can't live in that property. Out, eviction orders given by the Imam. When such hard instructions were given by the Imam to this person in his dreams, he says to the Imam, was it not better you stayed where you were? So that is the reason that we are living in a time that we have to train ourselves to be obedient to the Imam, to the teachings of Allah, to whatever the Risala says. We have to be obedient so that when Imam arrives and carries out his instructions, it's going to be easier for us to follow. So, Imam, his judgments are going to be based on wahi. Ilm which Imam possesses is huzuri, that Allah has given that knowledge to the Imam, to the max. For example, Prophet Khizr and Prophet Musa, one of the great prophets, Prophet Khizr has been a mentor of Prophet Musa. They are present by the Mediterranean Sea. And there, a little bird comes to that Mediterranean Sea, dips its beak into that ocean, and a tiny drop of water falls off the beak of that small bird. Jibreel is present there. Both of these prophets are present, Khizr and Musa, both of them great. Asks the two of them that what was that you just saw? That bird dipped its beak into that ocean, drank some water, and a tiny droplet of water fell off her beak. What was it? Prophet Khizr says, I don't know. Prophet Musa says, I don't know. Jibreel says here, that tiny drop of water which fell off the beak of that bird is all the knowledge which you two prophets possess. All the knowledge. And then says, in the end of time, a prophet will come with his successor. The knowledge which they possess is as vast as this ocean compared to the knowledge of the Imam is such vast. When his judgments are going to be based on wahi, he goes backwards and forwards when it comes to time. Time doesn't mean, it's nothing for them. We say, Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman, the master of Asr, it's time and Zaman. So he is above that time. Time is nothing. Time is just for you and me living in this dunya to differentiate AMs and PMs and etc. For Imam, it doesn't make a difference. Imam is on top of that time. May that be Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen or may that be Imam al-Asr. Knowledge which they possess is also vast. The second Khalifa, he comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen and says that, Ali, do you know the reason why you are a loser? Do you know why you... Because you are blunt. Because you are very straightforward. Be like me, diplomatic, political. When people come to you, approach you, don't just quickly give out your instructions. Play with the words, be diplomatic, and then slowly carry out the instructions. Amir al-Mu'mineen quickly he opens his fist in front of Umar's face and says, how many fingers are there? He says 5. Imam says, why were you so quick? You should have been diplomatic, easy, play with words, say 1, 2, think, and then say 5. He says, I knew them, they are 5. Imam says, the same way as these 5 fingers are known to you, evident before you, that knowledge is present before you, the knowledge of everything which Allah has created is evident before me. It is present. That is why I carry out those instructions.
For Muhammad wa ali Muhammad sallallahu
Or for example, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he is exactly the same reflection of Rasulullah. When he says in Quran, Nafsu Nabiyyan, that is the existence of Rasulullah. During the time of Rasulullah, a person from Yemen, he comes to Medina and says that I have heard that you are the Prophet in town. Rasulullah says, yes, I am the Prophet. He says, if you are the Prophet, what is your miracle? Rasulullah shows his Quran, says Quran is my miracle. He says that I'm an illiterate person, I cannot read, I cannot write. You haven't got those standard miracles that all other prophets had, like Prophet Hud, Prophet Isa, Prophet Musa, giving life to the dead, blind were given cured, shifa, etc. He says, yes, whichever miracle from whichever prophet you want, ask, will be provided and presented to you. Now this person, he says that from this mountain, Ya Rasulullah, I want a camel. Rasulullah says, what kind of a camel do you want? He says, I want a red camel. And Rasulullah says, anything else? Says, I want that with everything, or a fully loaded camel, the last version of it. Rasulullah says, how many do you want? He says, I want 6. Says, okay. Says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, just like the camel which emerged from Prophet Hud, a camel emerged from that mountain for this Yemeni Arab. He took 2 of them there. Says, I'll take them for a test drive and then I'll come back to collect the 4. Rasulullah says that, okay, so you owe 4 more camels from me. 2 were given to him. He takes those 2 camels, comes to town, becomes a muballigh, a propagator of Rasulullah, that a prophet has come in the Arabian Peninsula and he has these miracles, and this camel was provided by him to me as his miracle. Now after 60-70 days he returns to Medina to collect his 4 other camels. Now Rasulullah has passed away. Comes and says that there is no prophet but that he should have a successor, a wasi. Who is the prophet's successor? Says Abu Bakr is his successor. Comes to Abu Bakr and says that the prophet owes me 4 camels and you have to give them to me. Now Abu Bakr, he has no answer, no solution to that. Says, okay, give him these. No, I don't want these. I want those red camels which the prophet had given me. Says, take these, take more than 4, 50, 100 we can give you, but those red we don't have. No. He says, the prophet gave me red and I want those red camels, exactly the same ones which were given to me by him. There is no solution. Now, one of the other things we have over here is that in these majalis of khulafa, in all these hot spots, we had those who loved Amirul Mu'mineen present there. Here Salman was present. Says that, alayka bi Abil Hassan, go to Abil Hassan, that is Amirul Mu'mineen. They come to Amirul Mu'mineen now. Amirul Mu'mineen is a young lad of about 33 years of age. Rasulullah has just passed away about 60 days ago. Comes and says that the Prophet gave me and he owes me 4. He says, I remember, I was present there. With Husain, with Salman, with Abu Zar, with Mirdad, all of them are present. He says, okay, I've come to collect them. Says Amirul Mu'mineen, exactly like Rasulullah, they come to the same mountain. As he stood, he stands, says Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and the camels, they emerge, and then he says that, yes, no doubt that you are the successor of Rasulullah. Knowledge given to Ma'asumeen is great. Akhlaq of Amirul Mu'mineen is second to none, exactly like Rasulullah. A Jew in town in Kufa, there is no one as humble as Amirul Mu'mineen. One of the names given to Ma'asumeen is Ghaws. We have Ghawsul Ummah. Ghaws means someone who helps the nation. Here, Amirul Mu'mineen is Ghawsul Ummah, as Imam al-Asr is also Ghawsul Ummah. Says that in the hot weathers, extreme weathers of Kufa, now those of you who've been to Karbala and Kufa, you know that the temperatures are soaring, plus 50, 55 Celsius nowadays in summer. Says in those hot days, Amirul Mu'mineen, an old man, plus 60 years of age, and in his last days of his life, he in Darul Khilafah, those of you who've been to Masjid Kufa, see how big it is. Here, Amirul Mu'mineen doesn't sit in his office, sits by the gate where the security guards are sitting. When inquired that why, Ya Amirul Mu'mineen, you sit here by the doors, says that people who are in need, who need my help, I don't want them to be delayed and caught in the security, walk all the way through to my office and then I sort them out. Says they have to be dealt quickly and as easily and as soon as possible. Imam sits in the hot weathers outside the Darul Khilafah so that people are eased. On a night like tonight, which is the 19th of the sacred month of Ramadan, Imam is hit. We find in the books of Ahadith that Imam breaks his fast in the house of one of his children each night. One day in the house of Imam al-Mujtaba, another day at Abu Abdullah and Hussain's house. On a day he is a guest of Abdullah bin Ja'far, his daughter Zainab. And tonight he was the guest of Kulsum, his youngest daughter. Says that 3 days prior to tonight, Imam had cut down in the intake of his food, fasting, and also in that iftar he had cut down. They say that not more than 3 spoons he used to eat. That also just a few morsels of bread. And then he was worried. He looks to the skies. Kulthum says that, Father, why are you so worried? He says that I was never lied, nor did I ever lie. What was told to me was a fact, is truth. What I see is going to unfold, is unfold. Kulthum says, what is that? Says, it is the last moments of my life, and soon I will be departing. Kulthum, she is disturbed. It is time for iftar. Imam, every now and then he stands and looks at the stars at the skies. She presents the iftar, a little piece of bread with some salt and some milk. Imam sees that this iftar has a sharp look. Says that, Kulthum, when did you see your father break his fast with 3 things? Take one away. She wants to take away the salt. Imam says, take away the milk. Breaks his fast with that bread and that salt, just a few morsels of it, and then Imam is worried. Has a little nap, gets up, looks at the stars, looks at the skies. And when it is time for prayers here, Imam wants to set off to Masjid Kufa. Now, those of you who've been to Masjid Kufa, you know that where the house of Imam is and where that mihrab where Imam was hid is. There's a bit of a distance there. And there are 2 paths to get to that mihrab. Hujr ibn Adi, one of the sincere companions of Rasulullah, one of the sincere companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen, he comes to the mosque and he hears these conspirators that there is some danger to the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen, runs to the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen to notify him of what they have planned, but he sees that Imam, he has already set off to the mosque. Imam, when he is leaving for the mosque, the ducks in the house, they start quacking, wailing, crying. They come and hold the Aba of Amir al-Mu'mineen. That is, stop, Ya Imam, don't go. Stop, Ya Imam, don't go. In their own language. Imam wants to set off. His Aba is caught in the doornail of his house. That again wants to say that don't go, Ya Imam. Don't go, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Ibn Kulthum says that, why did you send Hassan? Let him go and lead the prayers. You stay back. Imam says that what is to unfold is going to unfold. What is to happen is going to happen. Death you cannot flee from. Says that prepare yourself for your death, Ya Ali. Imam sets off to the mosque. There he comes to the mosque, sees that Ibn Muljam ibn Abi La'natullah alayhi is sleeping on his belly. Imam comes and wakes him, says that Ibn Muljam, get up. And I know what your intentions are. Just to let you know that the way you are sleeping on your belly is the way Shaitan sleeps. Sleep on your back or on your right. Imam wakes him and comes, that Adhan is given. And when he starts his prayers, and he was in his sajda, this mal'oon, he comes, attacks the Imam saying, La hukma illa lillah. That is, hukm and command is only for Allah, not for you, Ali. And strikes Imam on his head, on the same wound where Amr ibn Abdul had hit the Imam. Imam's head is drenched in his blood. Imam's beard is soaked in his blood. Now there when Imam falls to the ground in sajda, he continues with his prayers in the sitting posture. Imam al-Mujtaba, he continues with the prayers. And then Imam in sajda says that Fuztu wa Rabbil Kaaba. That is, to the Lord of Kaaba I sought prosperity. And there says that Minha khalaqnakum, addressing the sand, the earth, says that it is from the sand that we were created. وَمِنْهَا فيها نعيدكم, to this sand we will return, ومنها نخرجكم تارة أخرى, and once again we will be raised from that. Amir al-Mu'mineen is wounded. Now looking over here in Masjid al-Kufa, they come, hold Amir al-Mu'mineen and bring him to the house. But then we have a Karbala where a father is fallen to the ground and there is no one to help him, there is no one to assist him. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. إلهي بحق الزهراء وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها, يا الله 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 يا الله. إلهي بحق علي اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات, تابع اللهم بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات, إنك مجيب الدعوات, إنك على كل شيء قدير.
Allah.